First off, why is it called the No Stripes movement, and why did it happen in the first place?
Uh, I'm going to take a guess at the answer to the first one. I think it's if it was called the No Stripes movement or the Stripe movement or whatever it was an act, a, a, a a gesture in which collectively RCMP members came together, took off the yellow stripe on their general duty uniform in protest and to draw awareness to the lack of support and the lack of finances and the lack of like the poor working conditions and the dysfunction within the RCMP. And at that time, the union stuff came as a consequence to those things. So we weren't thinking that centrically, we weren't thinking about a union when we did it. We wanted things to get better.
Yeah.
On a variety of different fronts. And so we chose, and it was actually a few members in North Vancouver that had chose to do that. And then I quickly had heard about it and said, okay, let's make this, let's communicate about this and do on it. Yeah. Yeah. So, and at that time, the union stuff came as a consequence to those things. So we weren't thinking that centrically, we weren't thinking about a union when we did it. We wanted things to get better.
Yeah.
On a variety of different fronts. And so we chose, and it was actually a few members in North Vancouver that had chose to do that. And then I quickly had heard about it and said, okay, let's make this, let's communicate about this and do on it. Yeah. Yeah. So, that was why it was called the No Strike movement. Why did it come into effect? I think everyone could probably give you their own specific reasons as to why they tore off their stripe. I'll give you mine. I was now in a senior management leadership position in a larger size contract policing detachment. That means, we had dozens of police officers in uniform, serious crime, all, traffic, you name it. And so I understood the working conditions of your regular frontline policing detachment. And I'd been through small, medium, and large detachments. The conditions, the support, oftentimes the leadership, all the tools that we needed to do our job it was becoming less and less and less. We were more and more unsupported. We were getting paid less to do more. We were shorthanded, and it was going this way. It wasn't going in the right direction. And it just got to a point, I remember, I'll give you some very, very specific examples.
Please.
Cars that were miled out, every police car, we drive those things in very taxing and fast, but in environments where, they get replaced every 200,000 kilometers, I believe was the time. Why? That's a safety issue.
Yeah.
And if your wife and your two kids are at home and I have to go knock on their door and tell them that you were killed in a car accident because my car wasn't in the proper shape because you were doing your job, that's not what you or I or anyone else in that situation was. So there's the equipment. Ordering bulletproof vests, we weren't getting them. They were delayed. Members were wearing expired bulletproof vests. We hadn't had, there's deficits of positions being filled. Internal conflict and strife between grievances and conflict between supervisors and people. Now there's people off duty sick, so we're doing more with less people. We hadn't had a raise. And a matter of fact, we had a labor contract with the federal government that had been broken and promises not withheld for several years, still waiting in the mix. And so as a leader, I just saw, okay, what kind of action can I do to have the highest degree of impact at this point? Because like morally, from my own personal values, I couldn't keep just saying, oh yeah, wait for your vest, or let's just leave two people on a Friday night. I remember this specifically. I got a call once from an RCMP member in the Comox Valley. I'll be very specific. Comox Valley, Vancouver Island, who said, it is like now, I think there are like 80,000 people. And they said, there was more people working at the Tim Hortons last night than there were police officers on duty in that massive city.
My goodness.
Think about that for a minute. So these were the problems. Now, we just simply, and what you have, and we can get into this, but what you have is you have leadership in the force, and now we're getting back to the good old interview days, but you have these leadership, they're not in the front lines of policing. But what they should have is a connected moral contract to represent the interests of those who are on the front lines of policing. So as the information of these dire circumstances goes up, well, when we're working the night shifts at 3 a.m., they're in bed. They're working Monday to Friday. They're commissioned officers in Ottawa making decisions, and some of them have never done operational police work in their whole entire lives, right? So there's a complete disconnect. And at a certain point in time, not everyone, but I will say this, as you promote in any police agency, you start to you get to those ranks because you are able to advance the personal interests of your own advancement of your career before the other things. You get promoted by doing what your boss tells you to do, even if that means you're not serving the people below you. That's the problem. And I still think, if you were to talk about it, and certainly the people that problem exists still today.
Yeah.
What if we changed the promotional system in that if you wanted a promotion, you have to display certain competencies, your ability to lead, and all these other core competencies. But what if we went and actually asked the people below you how much they feel supported by you? And that your promotion was contingent on 70% of the people saying they approve your promotion from below, not above. I mean, you're always going to be dealing with performance management issues. You'll always have a couple of people that, your tie, they say your tie's ugly and your tie's not ugly, right? But if everyone's saying that your tie is ugly across the board, then guess what?
Who's the common?
Your tie's effing ugly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if that became a part of the promotional system, now we're not relying on values and good morals and all these things. Now we're actually incentivizing leaders to adhere to the social contract of the frontline workers because it becomes part of their promotion. What if the commissioner of the RCMP was a collective voted position by all the membership in the nation? Why is Justin Trudeau or the federal government appointing that position? These people should be able to debate. They should be able to, ultimately campaign to the greater membership as to why should I be your leader? And that membership should have the vote. So I will say, like, that continues to be is I'm not saying there are not good leaders in high positions, but I'm saying that the incentivized process of promoting into these high ranking is deeply flawed. And until they fix that, you will always have people who, want to promote, they advance their own careers and are okay with knowing that there's expired bulletproof vests or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, you had said that I think to quoting you in a CBC interview, spoiler alert, it's the system is designed to fail right now.
The system is designed to fail, and it still is designed to fail. Nothing changed. So I at that day, that moment, I talked to the guys in North Van, and I said, okay, you're doing this, but we need to do more. We need to get the media involved and start telling the story. And so I remember calling the CBC, frustrated at the office, and I was just like in uniform. And I'm like, listen, I'm tearing my stripe off. This is why, and you need to talk to me about this. And they said, can you go on the evening news right now? Will you go home and go on camera? And I said, I absolutely, like, at that point, I knew either I can't just keep going morally. I can't keep going on this journey any longer. It would just, I didn't want to be part of it. So if I was going to stay, something had to change. Went home. I was actually it's interesting. Now you kind of go behind. I was incredibly nervous. Like, I'm thinking, okay, I might be fired. I don't know what will happen. I went home. My wife at the time was at Seychelles. I went to the front door. I came home from work and she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm going on the news. I've had enough. And she goes, really? And I'm like, yeah, I took off my tie, I slammed down a glass on the table, poured about, an inch and a half of scotch down the scotch. And I was like, let's go, and went downstairs and set up the camera, and boom, it was on. And I remember just telling myself, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Don't hide the truth, and also give your opinion as to why now you're upset. That's all I wanted to do. And so, I was going to say, this is how I feel. I needed to feel sort of understood at the time. And it it's just all of a sudden sparked a flame. Now, this was not about one person after this. This was all of a sudden about this message resonated with um, a lot of people from St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way out to Tofino, to north to Grease Fjord, and all of a sudden people are like, yes, I feel this way too. And everyone just started, it was, we're not quitting, we're not refusing to work, we're just going to start at this phase of making a gesture to show that we need some attention on these things. And it was I think in my life, if I'm reflecting back to that day, the second interview, the third, kind of where we held rallies outside of MP's offices and all these other things. What happened to me was I understood how powerful, if a group of people can come together, how powerful that they can be in bringing about some degree of change. None of that would have happened. So what happened was there was various groups vying to be the union for the RCMP, but you needed to have 50% of the vote in order to become that. One of the groups decided, to not necessarily support, pulling off, and the other groups remained just agnostic. And so that caused people to switch over, and then you had your majority vote. So it wasn't me, who created a union. It was the collective body of the RCMP, the people who were aggrieved, doing something in unison together in a powerful and very professional way that brought about that change. Now, we can get into the union, we can get into, the evolution of the union and so on and so forth, but that was fine. After the second, but I'll put that aside for now. But after the first interview, I remember my going back to E Division headquarters and meeting with the divisional senior management team, and just sort of saying, it wasn't as adversarial as you think. It was the division commander and all her executive, management team there. And again, I was just like, I'm just going to tell the truth and do this. And I said, they actually said to me, the division commander, you said to me, I don't disagree with the messaging that you're doing. I don't disagree with you, Chris, on what you're saying here.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to her, well, then why don't you speak up? Why don't you come with me? As a matter of fact, after we have this meeting, I'm going back down to the CBC to do another interview about this. Why don't you come and at least, if you don't agree with me, give more information. Let's debate about this. And they were like, I cannot do that. And then now I'll go back to the original. They cannot do that because they don't want to distort or ruin the advancement of their careers. That's why they can. And therein lies the problem with the RCMP. And if they were incentivized to do that, if the next promotion of the divisional commander to commissioner of the RCMP would be contingent on the vote of every RCMP member in British Columbia, then that commanding officer would have likely come down to the CBC and at the very least, weighed in on some aligned perspectives of what we were doing.
Yeah.
So, this is the sort of thing. So anyway, I went back down. I mean, you can watch the interviews. I'm not going to reiterate a lot of that. But then it was after that I started seeing, again, the collective interest movement of the RCMP from coast to coast really take on. And we arranged and conducted a few rallies outside of MP's offices, wanting to get federal government MPs pressure on the federal government to get us more support and pay more attention to this issue. And in time, what was born, the NPF, the National Police Federation, got 50% of the votes, but there was going to still be time for them to make this application. I can't remember the exact legal process they had to be given. But today now, you have the National Police Federation, the union, it came about. And of course, the thing that is different now that is from before is on all these issues, the membership now is they pay union dues to people who are in positions who can hopefully negotiate for their collective interests in those and make those situations better. Is it better? Are we better? Well, I think the MPF did a really fantastic job in negotiating a long overdue wage increase. I think they've done that very well. But at the same time, and I've always said this, and I'm not speaking directly about the MPF, but here's the slippery slope of when you have a union is if those union people, much like the leaders, are not deeply connected and willing to fight for the rights and conditions for the people, if there's alignment otherwise, if they're not incentivized to do that, then what's happens is all you have is you're paying a lot of money to union dues and nothing ever changes.
Yeah.
So it's that is a situation where you want to make sure that the people, and they are elected positions, but you just want to make sure that those people are held accountable and properly incentivized to do the right kind of negotiation. Is it an easy job? Oh gosh, I mean, I know how it is.
No.
So many people from east to west coast calling individually about their situation. I need your help right now, and there's probably not enough of them to really properly represent all those memberships. Having said that, you still need that will, that power, and that determination to really make sure that you're pushing all the time for those rights. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be completely aligned with the people you're negotiating with either. You have to be able to understand, but then remember that you're incentivized to fight for the rights of the memberships. And I'm not in a position to really, comment about how I would feel if I was there, because I'm not there.
No. Yeah.
But I do hear the members, and I think there has been a negotiation where they're working for more money.
Okay.
And I would be looking deeply like what other systemic changes have been made or are being pushed for at the present time or since then that extend beyond just getting a raise. And that would be a question I would have for the union at this point. What else? What else has happened?
So many issues. And just for the viewers, like at the time that this was happening, I believe the starting salary for an RCMP constable was about $50,000. And their counterparts in municipal police departments like Vancouver City Police were starting at $68,000, so $18,000 difference. It's much higher now today, but that was the difference in who's going to get the talent in those instances. Another incident that happened was just, I think you cited it in the interview, was the Moncton police shootings, where 3 officers were killed, and there was debate over would they have been killed if they had proper firearms and proper equipment. And you cited that, and huge tragedy. And but this is how these things pan out, and why people like yourself were speaking up, because it's it's affecting day-to-day life.
Yeah, if you're the union, or sorry, if I would, if I was, I have no interest in being in the union, by the way, but if I was in the union, they get bogged down with these individual cracks in the wall, these individual very hot and aggrieved members along the way that feel they've been mistreated, so they get sucked up into representing that. I think as well, you need to find out how to bring about systemic change, bigger change, that now as you bring about those changes will decrease the amount of these particular flare-ups. And so, throughout my journey, I've always felt that when it came to contract policing, now when I say contract policing, for people who don't understand that, I mean, this is where the uniform, the RCMP contracts policing service to provinces and small towns along the way. So if you're in Central Alberta town, your RCMP, you're contracted, they contract that policing to you. Okay. This isn't a federal policing mandate, and on and on. Those are the front lines of policing. The RCMP needs to shit or get off the pot when it comes to supporting contract policing. And then they're going to say, well, we need more money, or whatever the case might be. That is not just the issue. I've always felt, and this is admittingly among some of my peers, my troop mates, even my pit partner, is that it's an unpopular opinion, but I've always felt that the RCMP should get out of contract policing. that they shouldn't provide that service, that they should put that back onto the provinces, the towns, and everyone else to go to the people who are paying the taxes and say, this is truly the cost of policing. And if you want this cost, you're going to have to pay for it. Because if you want a no call, too small type of response where your cats, whatever you need it for, then this is the cost of policing. That does not happen in the RCMP. It is just, it doesn't get honestly told to people. And then, of course, they're the cheapest policing. They undercut everyone and they become the Walmart of policing. So that's a problem. And you can see that playing out in right now, I mean, the nice transition into the Surrey City Police / RCMP. Now, if you're the RCMP, from an ego perspective, from a contract policing business perspective, you do not want to lose that contract. Having said that, if you go to a provincial or a municipally funded police force, it's going to be more money, but you're going to get more funding and you're going to do all these things. So it is a model that when you look at it, look at some of the municipal police forces, they still have their systemic issues, but they're paid more money. They get more, they have a strong union, they have more manpower, their working conditions and the service, like the contract policing service that they provide, is much different than you'll get if you're and how on earth do you come up with sort of a consistent way of policing all these places, same pay for members who are living in out east where the cost of living is less than members how about the members that are in Grease Fjord, the more northern detachment of all, they're living up there. It would be better off to allow these geographical places, their governments, their budgets to manage these things. And then, and so mayors run on platforms that I can improve the cost of policing, or I can improve the service quality, but it's going to cost money. And then other mayors come along and they say, oh no, we want the RCMP back, and so on and so forth. What I will tell you about the Surrey situation right now that I have no problem sharing is whether it should remain the RCMP or Surrey Police. I don't think the RCMP does a great job at contract policing. I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job. There are hundreds of members that are putting their lives on the line every day and providing very good quality. But I think the model is just different. Now, if you want to, create this police force, and you've taken millions and millions and millions and millions of my tax-paying dollars, if I'm a resident in Surrey, to do a transition over to a municipal police force, we're almost halfway, and because of a political pissing match between a former and current mayor, we're going to start transitioning either back the other way because we want to switch the dial, or now you got the province offering to fund the rest of the way, a majority of that amount, and because of ego, I'm not willing to go. I'm just outright frustrated with the whole situation. It's a total political failure, in my opinion. And who are the victims? Surrey taxpayers, RCMP members do they have a home? Do they not have a home? Where should I go? Am I involved in my career right now, or am I going to be packing my bags? Surrey City Police members, I'm part of this new force. Does anyone like me? Do I even get to, are we even one? There's two police forces. You can bet there's cultural divides happening in there. They just want to police a community. Now they're wondering if they need to pack their bags and start over. They've left the RCMP, a lot of them, and other police forces, wondering what the heck we're going to do now. So there are zero winners at this point, zero winners and multiple losers. And all it is, in my opinion, political egos that are getting in the way.
Would you have any advice to the stakeholders that are negotiating these deals?
I believe that one mayor is just trying to, the hill she wants to stand on is she was reelected to keep the RCMP. That's her end game, right? And the one before that, he said, I will get rid of the RCMP, and kind of, so that's the zero sum game, which I think just, it fails everyone. What's the problem you're trying to solve? The problem you're trying to solve is that you're trying to improve the quality of contract policing. There were some frustrations that the RCMP was not able to provide. So what are the frustrations that the public was feeling? What are the frustrations and barriers, truthfully, that the RCMP was experiencing? Why were they not able to provide a quality of service that led to this discussion? Is it lack of funding from the federal government? Is there internal strife? Is there leaders not properly representing the front line? Well, what is it now that the SPS is designed to do? What are the changes that they want? I think they've got, I happen to know some of their senior management. They're very well intended. I was able to follow some of their cultural initiatives since they've started. They've done very, very well at trying to start something new and fresh. At this point, and you've got the province saying, like, listen, we will alleviate some of this financial pressure from the taxpayers. At this particular moment in time, I think it's a failure to go back. Now, and I get that people will hate that opinion and so on and so forth. But from a practical point of view, looking at the problem that you were trying to solve to begin with, you're already there. And I think that, if you give it time to truly execute its way, I think you will have solved that problem. And perhaps then the RCMP can look at it and go, okay, we don't want to lose other contract policing detachments in Canada. How can we get better too? And so, it's, do we need to be more honest with the federal government and, the federal agency that funds the RCMP? Does there need to be a change? Do we need to incentivize our leaders differently? Do we need to provide better conditions for people working in these cities that are high cost of living and so on and so forth? And what can we do to get better so that we don't necessarily, if you want to stay in contract policing? Or perhaps you have a conversation about the RCMP getting out of contract policing.
Love it. Yeah. And for the viewers out there who don't really understand this issue, this is the largest, I believe this is the largest contract the RCMP has. Surrey is the biggest municipality that the RCMP has. So this is a major contract loss for them. But speaking as someone who lives in Clayton Heights, which is technically in Surrey, feels more like Langley, to be honest, but that's beside the point. This is also a major area for gangs and turf wars and all these issues and we need quality policing. It's a hot topic. So I'm very interested to see where this goes, and I appreciate your insight into this.
Yeah, I think there's another important part, because I always have this, people always tell me, oh, you're always coming down on the leadership of the RCMP, you're always coming down on this. I mean, so let me wear the other hat for just a second to balance that out and truly make them feel like I know, like they're understood here in this situation. And the flip side of it is this. The public needs to realize that the level of policing service that they want and what they're paying for that policing service are not properly in alignment. So if you want a police officer in your school doing school liaison, if you want to see the guy in the park on the bike waving and, making sure the parks are safe, if you have a break and enter in your home and you come home, there's nobody there, but they stole your TV and that's very traumatic for a normal person to know that their home was broken into. But, if you want a police officer there within 15 minutes to bring someone, victim services, take all your information down, fingerprint the door handle, if you want that in every case, then you're going to need to double the amount of police officers that you put on the street right now. And that means you're going to have to pay double. So if you want that, you get what you pay for. And the public is used to being on a dollar store of policing fees, but wanting a Gucci style service. Yeah. And so they need to get a wake up call in that regard as well. That needs to change.